this is an incredible piece of audio because it's unprecedented, that almost unprecedented. The last time, troops were deployed in when the governor didn't want them there was back in the 1960s during the civil rights movement. It hasn't happened since then. So it's almost unprecedented, almost never has happened.
And that was requested by the governor.
Correct. So we know that Gavin Newsom doesn't want them there. We know the mayor doesn't want them there. We even more importantly, local law enforcement doesn't want them there. We know that we've seen images of these Marines that have been sleeping in offices. They don't even have places to stay or food or water. This is Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump's America, ladies and gentlemen. But here's Donald Trump himself saying to a reporter that we're going to have troops everywhere. Have a listen to this.
Even if you don't plan to invoke the Insurrection Act, do you plan to send troops to Los Angeles?
What?
Even if you're not planning to invoke the Insurrection Act, do you still plan to send troops?
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden and his auto pen.
What is the bar for sending Marines to
the bar is what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Sending active Marines on the table, sir. Secretary Hegseth.
We're going to see what we need. We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
Yeah, law and order, he says, right? Sure. Law and order. Yeah. The man who literally pardoned people who beat police officers on January 6th wants to preach to us about law and order. He called those people hostages and patriots. And Donald Trump, the orange orangutan adjudicated rapist, wants to talk to us about law and order when he defies the Constitution. He attacks judges and members of judges' families. He literally thinks that he's above law, the mob boss himself, and he wants to talk to us about law and order, Paul.
You know how I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. I have two boys, okay? And that was one of the best moments of my life, right? I was at home, my wife was recovering, I was changing their diapers, rocking them to sleep, taking pictures. This guy, his wife gives birth to their 2-week-old son. He's not at home taking care of his kid, rocking him. He's banging a porn star in Las Vegas. And people like MAGA Herb, and I hope you call in Herb, you think that this guy gives a crap about you? This guy doesn't even care about his wedding vows or his wife or his commitment to God. And you think he cares about law and order, a 34-count felon who rapes women? Come on, man.
It's despicable and it's disgusting. And this is the moment where Donald Trump says something very similar to what the former Miami police chief said back in 1967, which was when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Pay attention to this.
Do you foresee those protests spreading to other cities, Chicago, New York, for example, in the next few days?
Yes, we're going to be watching it very closely. And when they spit at people, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military, which they do as a common thing. They get up to them this far away and then they start spitting in their face. That happens, they get hit very hard.
So if he's talking about spitting, what about beating cops? That happened on January 6th. You called those people patriots and heroes and hostages. I mean, the hypocrisy is sickening to me. Now, listen, there are some people in L.A. that have done some very violent things and some very horrible things. I don't defend it. I want all those people held to the highest extent of the law. I've been very consistent and very clear on that. But don't talk to me about law and order and spitting when Donald Trump literally spits on our Constitution and rule of law.
The whole thing is just gross. I mean, there seems to be no moral bottom for these people. And I tell this story in my videos, and I know my wife gets tired of it, so I'm sorry, but I'll tell this quick 30-second story. So in the movie The Joker, Bruce Wayne's trying to figure out what the Joker wants. Is it fame? Is it fortune? Is it women? Is it notoriety? Is it money? And he tells a story about this caravan of millions of dollars of diamonds and gems that come through the forest, and these kids come out and murder everybody, and they take the diamonds, okay? 6 months later, Alfred's walking through the village. And they're sitting in the garbage can, all the gems, and they're playing with, rolling them around. And Bruce Wayne goes, why didn't they sell them? And he's like, Mr. Wayne, it was good sport. Some people just want to watch the world burn. And as hard as that is to say, that's what Donald Trump and his base are. They don't care if they're homeless, eating garbage on the side of a freeway. They will say, I will own the libs in the name of Jesus. Because defeating the Democrats is more important than even voting for their own best interest.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's just who they are.
I agree. Thank you, Kevin, in the YouTube super chat, who says, how much you want to bet he's only going to target blue and purple states. Well, that certainly wouldn't surprise me, Kevin. That's a very good point you made, and I certainly agree with you. So Donald Trump now apparently is saying that if you're wearing a helmet, that's against the law and you're going to get arrested. Folks.
And a face mask.
I'm not making this up. Donald Trump said it himself. Have a listen to this.
Another live look as the camera has now zoomed in. You can see that this person is wearing a helmet, so the face completely hidden right there. That is something that President Trump has said should not be allowed to have these anonymous protesters at these sites and these rallies right here. We haven't seen anything escalate to a specific point just yet.
Yeah, that's how a right-wing reporter was covering this, and she's actually correct. Donald Trump did say that it shouldn't be allowed wearing a helmet. Let's be very clear on this, Paul, okay? Trump is not our dictator. Nobody should care what Trump says, what you can or can't wear. This is the same guy who wears 8 layers of orange makeup. I say if you're Roger Stone or Donald Trump, you look ridiculous. You shouldn't be allowed to wear 8 layers of orange makeup and put those coats and slather them all over your face. But guess what? It's not against the law. We can mock you for it, but it's not against the law, and it also shouldn't be against the law to wear a helmet. Certainly not on public property.
What?
Now, if you go into a private business, a casino, a bank, you name it, yes, there are certain rules and regulations they can put into place. They say, you can't come on our property if your face is covered. Totally understandable. But not a public sidewalk, okay? Not public property. Donald Trump is basically saying what you can or can't wear, which is absurd.
Brian, they're ICE people, if that's what they are. They're wearing face masks every day. They're covering themselves up. How do we know? Let me ask you a question, Brian. How do we know that those people aren't people that were pardoned from January 6th?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that?
That's true.
We don't.
We don't.
They're putting them in
Don't
unmarked
you
cars.
find it interesting, Paul, that the MAGA right, they seem to claim these are all Democrats? I guarantee you a lot of these people in LA probably didn't even vote.
Yeah.
But yet somehow they think that because they're protesting the fact that the Donald Trump administration is not treating people as human beings, they're treating them as animals without due process. Somehow that makes them all lefties or Democrats. Not that
Right.
there would be anything wrong with that,
No.
but they make the gross assumption. But yet we know for sure that 99.9% of the people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th were right-wingers who were Trump supporters. How do we know that? Because it was proven in a courtroom. They came from right-wing fringe groups. This was not Antifa and this was not the left. But yet MAGA Republicans want to make some gross assumption that all these people that are protesting in LA are Democrats. They have no idea if they've even voted before, let alone if they're Democrats. And then there goes Mayor Karen Bass, who, by the way, has an extremely difficult job to do.
Mm-hmm.
And she said on CNN that they don't want our city under siege by these troops. This is the mayor saying this. Have a listen.
Well, LAPD, as you just noted, declared some of these gatherings unlawful assembly. Is that something you were made aware of before they did that? Did you okay that?
Yes, I didn't okay it. I don't run the police department. The chief does, but I was aware of it. And what I was told is that the protesters had begun throwing things. So to me, it is most important that everybody be allowed to exercise their First Amendment right, but it absolutely has to be done peacefully. Now, with federal troops on the ground, we do not need to have our city under siege. I remember the last time federal troops were on the ground here, and it was in 1992 when there was massive civil unrest. Nothing like that is happening here, so there is no need for there to be federal troops on our ground right now.
She's 150% correct. The governor says this and echoes what Bass said. And here's what's most important. Local law enforcement. Okay. The police chief has said multiple times, we didn't ask for this. We don't need this. Yes, there was a statement he made a few days ago where he said there was a time where they felt a little overwhelmed. But just because you feel a little overwhelmed doesn't mean you get a deployment from Washington, D.C. It's absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous. And by the way, the idea that Donald Trump asked for deployed troops coming in on January 6th. That's also a lie. MAGA Republicans keep bringing that up.
Yeah.
There is no executive order. There was nothing signed. There was an executive order that was signed by Donald Trump the other day to bring troops into the city of LA. And the idea that they keep saying that LA is a bunch of criminals is also not true. There's a lot of wonderful people that live in Los Angeles. There are some bad actors and there are some agitators that are doing some bad things. You shouldn't have deployed the Marines in there. You certainly shouldn't put Marines in LA without food, without water, and without a place to sleep. This goes to Donald Trump. He goes to the top, and Pete Hegseth and all these other unqualified idiots that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. He hasn't called the governor of California in days. How do we know this? Donald Trump has lied about it because Governor Newsom has shown his call log. He hasn't gotten a call from Donald Trump or any members of his administration in days. There is little to no communication with the mayor, with the governor, and with local law enforcement because Donald Trump really doesn't care. He wants chaos and he wants to own the libs, and that's what this is about.
His end game, I said this in January, his end game is martial law.
Yeah.
He has a very fragile ego, like a lot of his little insecure little wannabe alpha males that have their American flags and their pet bald eagles, and they're about seventh grade level. It's what he wants. He wants to get people riled up because his ego is so fragile. What's he doing now? It looks like North Korea. Look at the tanks coming in. I mean, the guy spent $30 million golfing, $20 million on the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
$5 million.
30% of his presidency is on the golf course. It's ridiculous.
I mean, he probably plays golf more than he changes his diaper. My God, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, nobody else is changing his diaper. Well, maybe Caroline Leavitt.